Hi and welcome to the second video in this section, in which we are going to look at how to use the elastic load balancer for blue-green deployments. So here it's very important to understand the weighted routing policy. Now in Route 53, you can define different routing policies. So this defines how traffic is routed to your resources which are defined in AWS. So you do this via policies. When you're working with blue-green deployments, you will normally use the weighted routing policy, and we are going to see this in an example. So you define a weighted routing policy in Route 53. You initially will create a weight. So normally in terms of blue-green deployments, you will create a weight of 80-20. What this means is that 80% of your traffic will be directed towards your blue environment, that's your current production, and 20% will be directed towards your green environment, which is the one or the next version which needs to go into production. When testing is complete, you are fine with all the checks on your new version. Then you can slowly switch the weight onto 0-100, which means all of the traffic will now be directed towards your new live version. So again, if you have your application, you have your blue version and your new version of your application, you can use Route 53, define a weighted policy, and make sure that 80% of the traffic, so initially goes to your live version of the application, and then 20% goes on to the new version of your application. If you have applications which are hosted on EC2 instances and you have Route 53, you can do that as well. So you can again divert the traffic, and this is what we're actually going to see in an example. We're also going to be using an elastic load balancer. Now, what are the benefits of using an elastic load balancer in front of your EC2 instances? So the load balancer has the ability to take in a flurry of requests. It has better elasticity for your entire deployment. And what are the biggest advantages is that when you do that final switchover onto your green environment and all of the requests start coming in from your users, the elastic load balancer will auto-scale itself in order to ensure that your backend EC2 instances don't get that flurry of requests in one shot. So that's the advantage of having the load balancer. Now let's go to the AWS console. Let's see how to use the load balancer, how to use Route 53, and how to use weighted routing policies. So here we are in the AWS console. Now let's go on to the EC2 dashboard. Now I'm in the Tokyo region. Now I'm going to launch two EC2 instances. So these are going to be ideal instances. So let's launch the instance. I'm going to choose Ubuntu has the AMI. I'll choose a t2.small. I'm going to leave this in my default VPC. I'll choose no preference for the availability zone. I'll make sure that the public IP is assigned to the instance. I will go on to next. I will leave the storage as it is. I will go on to the tag. What I will do, I will just add a name value tag. So I'll define this as server A. In the security group, I will create a new security group. So I'll just say that this is a security group for our server. I'm also going to add a rule for port 80. So what we're going to do is that we're going to be installing a simple Nginx web server on this instance. So let me ensure that I have a security group rule that allows inbound traffic onto this instance. Let's go on to review and launch. I'm going to launch. I do have this key pair. In case if you don't have a key pair and you're following along, create a new key pair for the instance. So since I already have the key pair, I'm going to acknowledge that I have it, and I'm going to launch the instance. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance. So this will be server B. So I want to have two instances in place. So let me choose same settings for this instance. Again, the default VPC. Let me, let the AWS define on the availability zone. Let's ensure the public IP is in place. Let's add storage. And this time for the name tag, let me put as server B on the security group. Let me choose the existing security group which I have for the server. Let me do a review and launch. And let me launch this instance as well. Now let's come back once both the instances are in the running state. Now once both the instances are in the running state, create a putty session to the instances and then go ahead and start installing the Nginx web server. You can install any web server of your choice. So first I'm going to do is that I'm going to do an apt-get update. This is to ensure that the server is updated with the recent packages. Once that is done, I'll do an apt-get install and I'll install the Nginx web server. So once this is done, I'm also going to do this on the second server. So again, the same apt-get update to update the server, and then do an apt-get install to install Nginx. Now once the Nginx is installed on both the servers, what you can do is that you can go to the public IP or even the DNS name. Just verify that the servers are running, right? So we've got this. Let's go on to server B. Let's copy it. And so we have Nginx running on both the web servers. Now, what I've gone ahead and done in the interest of time, I've actually gone ahead to the web server, each individual web server, and I just changed the home page so that we know which server, which URL points to which server. So when we go to our first public IP, it will show this is server A. Similarly, when we go to the second public IP, it will show this is server B. This is just for us to decipher which server is being invoked when we issue a request, and this will be very important when we actually go into Route 53. So now that we have our instances defined, let's go ahead and create two elastic load balancers. So let's go on to the load balance section. Let's create a load balancer. Let's choose the application load balancer. So this is the new type of load balancer. Let's name this as server A load. Let's keep it as an internet facing load balancer. Let's keep the default load balancer protocol. We are in the default VPC. Let's choose all the availability zones. Go on to next. Let's create a new security group. Let's ensure the protocol port range is as it is. Let's create a new target group. Let's go on to next to register our targets. So let's put server A as part of this and register this as a target. Let's go on to next for review. Let's go on and create our load balancer. Now let's do a similar thing. Let's create another load balancer, this time for server B. Let's name this as server B load. Again, the same internet-facing load balancer. Let's choose our default VPC. Choose all the availability zones. This time we can choose our existing load balance security group. Let's define a new target as server B group. Let's go on to next. Let's register our server B has the target. Let's go on to next for review. Let's create the load balancer. So now we have two load balancers. These are being provisioned. So let's wait till the provisioning process is complete. Now in the meantime, I've opened Route 53 in another tab. Now I've already gone ahead and registered one domain name, so cloudportalhub.com. So this is my hosted zone. Now in this hosted zone, we are going to create two record sets. These are going to be weighted record sets, and these are going to point to our two elastic load balancers. So let's come back and wait once the provisioning is complete for the elastic load balancers. Now once both the load balancers have been provisioned and are active, you can actually go on to the DNS name, that's the A record. Let's open it in the browser. So we are getting this is server A. Let's go on to our server B load balancer. Let's take the DNS name. Let's copy it. So we're getting this is server B. So our elastic load balancers are working as desired. Now let's go on to Route 53. Let's create our record sets. Let's leave the name as cloudportalhub.com. So it has to point to our domain name. Since we have an elastic load balancer, we can choose an alias record. And let's choose server A. So we'll create one record which points to our server A load balancer. Let's choose the routing policy as weighted. Now let's imagine that this is our blue deployment or our blue environment, which is our production, which is being used by our users. So normally what you would do is that you would put the weight as 80 and then you would put the weight of the other record as 20. But just for the purpose of this demo, to show how the weighted routing policy works, since we don't have many number of users, so we can put this as 50 so that equal amount of traffic is going to both our load balancers. You have to put an ID of 1. You can put any ID, but it has to be in sequence. We don't need to evaluate a target health. Let's go ahead and create this record set. Let's create another record set. This will point to our second load balancer. So let's again choose alias. Let's choose the server B load balancer. Let's put the routing policy as weighted. Let's put the weight as 50. Let's put the ID as 2, the second one. And let's go ahead and create this routing policy. So now let's wait till the DNS records have been refreshed and then come back and see what is the effect of putting this weighted and let's come back and see what is the effect of having these weighted routing policies in Route 53. Now after some time, when you actually put cloudportalhub.com now in the browser, if you open up in one tab or one browser, you will get this is server A. And what I've done is that I have just opened Internet Explorer and I've gone to the same site, and over here I'm getting this is server B. So now what's happening is that Route 53 is evenly distributing the requests amongst the load balancers and hence to your web servers. I said when you do a blue-green deployment, you would specify a different percentage. I said just for the purpose of this demo, I put the percentage as 50-50 so that the traffic is evenly distributed. So this is how you can use Route 53 and the weighted routing policies to route traffic two different resources in your AWS account. Now let's move on to our next video, which is using the elastic beanstalk environment for blue-green deployments.